heard some samples of your music, and from what I can tell, it sounds like you do a lot of music for films, videos, public service announcements, that kind of thing.
Well, I typically score my own videos. So most of the videos that I have online are videos that I have shot and produced, and I would typically add a piece of my own music to them. That's another way that kind of music led me in all these other directions. I actually thought a while about studying music and becoming a film composer or a composer for film. Mm-hmm. But you know, I'm self-taught. I'm self-taught on the guitar, and I really have a very good knack for teaching myself, and I learn pretty quickly. But I wasn't really very good at reading music, and I think one of the reasons is by the time I started trying it, I was already so much better without reading music. I got impatient. and the other thing was, I said, well, I don't want to do it their way. I want to do it my way. So what am I reading their music for? You know? So I kind of I ended up by scoring a lot of films, but they're all my own. So I kind of got what I wanted to do because I got to write music for film. But it's all short format. You know, all my stuff is 3 to 5 minutes, 8 minutes tops.
And what kind of things? I saw one was public service announcement, Johnny Seatbelt Sez.
Yes. Did you see that one? That was one of my first commissioned videos. Nice.
Who commissioned that? What was that for? A Department of Transportation?
That was in Massachusetts. After Wheeler and I broke up, we're jumping all over here, but that's okay. After Wheeler broke up in the early 90s, I moved back to New England, and I received a grant from what was it called? It was called the Massachusetts Highway Safety Bureau. And they had just published an ad in the paper looking for ideas for traffic safety. They had a little bit of money. And I said, I'm a video producer now. I'll pitch them a couple ideas. So I pitched them 2 ideas. And the one that they went for, Johnny Seatbelt, was basically ripped off from an old juggling routine that we used to do where we used to juggle eggs.
It all ties in.
Eggs. And, yes, it does all. Well, I learned so much, from performing and from knowing how to kind of entertain an audience and entertain them with comedy and with visuals, that it was a very easy thing to translate to video.
Uh-huh.
One of the problems that I had career-wise is that no one would hire me to do that because, on the job market, I was, an older adult who was just starting out in video production. So all the jobs that I got, were tech jobs, just shooting camera for all kinds of stuff, corporate stuff, wedding stuff, legal depositions. And my interest in video was in creating content using my particular style, using visuals, using music, using comedy. So anyway, I pitched this group an idea about seatbelt safety, using raw eggs, because we had this raw egg juggling routine, and the idea of a raw egg in motion, it automatically sets you up for some pretty easy drama. And
yes.
So they went for it. And then, of course, I didn't really have the whole thing planned out. So once they went for it, I kind of said, okay, now I got to figure out how to actually do it.
Yeah.
There is that.
That's funny. Now, I have to ask you, do you still eat eggs? Because I read that you used to eat like 5 to 6 raw eggs a day.
I used to eat 5 to 6 raw eggs a day back in the day. But, we had to do it right. People would be concerned about salmonella or whatever, so we only picked the good eggs. Our eggs that we used, they were pasteurized, they were organic, and they were homeschooled, so, we didn't have any problem there.
Homeschooled eggs, that's right.
And yes, I still eat eggs, but no, I don't eat raw eggs anymore. And the other thing that I don't do anymore is, because when we used to eat the eggs, we had this routine where we would crack them into a wine glass, and then we would add in a couple drops of Tabasco, and then we would toast the audience and then knock it back. So I don't eat the raw eggs anymore, and I can't eat Tabasco sauce anymore either. It just reminds me too much of those days.
I don't even know how you can even still look at an egg after all that. I mean, ugh.
Well, that routine was born out of necessity because we were trying to entertain through juggling, but we're just starting out, and we didn't have any technique. I mean, we couldn't do any tricks, and we didn't know any jokes. That's what most of the jugglers down there at the time were doing, tricks and jokes. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know how to do that. So my partner came up with this idea of, the basic premise is I'm going to juggle 3 raw eggs, and if I drop an egg, I'll eat 1 raw. And that's what I would say. And it worked so well because without us doing anything, they would all stop and they would turn and we would have their attention.
I would imagine.
On premise alone. So, and then it turned into a kind of a glorified competitive egg toss where we juggle and toss them back and forth, and whoever dropped it, and somebody always dropped it, whoever dropped it had to eat it. So
you basically made a career out of glorified college pranks. That's really cool.
Yeah, right?
Kind of. I like to think of it as slightly more skillful than college pranks, but maybe not.
Yes. Well, it sounds like you were pretty skillful in college yourself, so yeah.
That's cute, Mike. Now, you've traveled all over the world doing your show, and one of the things that stood out to me is that Osaka, Japan, gave you the key to their city. I mean, what a great honor that was.
It was. We were invited over with a small bevy of performers. There were maybe 8 or 10 of us. And we were invited over to participate in a sister city festival because Osaka and San Francisco are sister cities.
Ah.
And it's kind of ironic. And I make this point in my show a couple times because I talk about, what it's like to be a street performer and what people's perceptions are and how, their perceptions don't necessarily match up to the reality of what a street performer can be. Because I've known, hundreds of top-notch acts that either started on the streets or started and stayed on the streets. Most of them, if you get good enough, you can work all kinds of venues.
Right.
So working the streets is just another venue. But some of the best entertainment I've ever seen has been from people who take up this style. And but so the irony is that here we were, even in San Francisco, even though we're all making our living, we're all making good money, we all traveled to lots of other gigs. You're still kind of looked down upon certainly in the theater world as street performers, and you don't have the skills to work at a comedy club. I don't know. But so the irony was, in San Francisco and in America, we're kind of on the low end of the entertainment totem pole. In Japan and in Asia, street performers are at the high end of the entertainment totem pole. We're at the top.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
That must have felt nice. Yeah.
In fact, there's this saying, and the saying goes something like, if you're a street performer in America, you're a bum. If you're a street performer in Europe, you're an artist. If you're a street performer in Asia, if you're a street performer in Asia, you're a god.
Oh my gosh!
Wow, that must have been refreshing for you.
Isn't that funny?
Oh. Yeah. So being invited to the Sister City Festival and performing, we were invited to perform on the steps of City Hall in Osaka, and we met the mayor along with our entourage and the other performers. And yes, we're given
Did we lose Andrew?
Ceremonial. I'm still here. Are you still there?
I'm here.
I'm here. Do you hear me?
I hear you, Andrew. We might have lost Pam.
But I heard her say, "Uh-oh, did we lose Andrew?"
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I think she'll probably try to jump back in. So go ahead. We'll keep going.
Okay. Where was I? Oh, it was just, being bestowed. I found out the key to the city. It doesn't go to anything. It's ceremonial only. So it was a little disappointing. I thought, maybe the mayor's office or something, but no such luck.
At least the men's room, that would be helpful,
Well, yeah. Yeah. But,
so tell us a little bit about the current show, The Road to High Street. What's that like? What's that all about?
Well, The Road to High Street, I knew when I was performing as a street performer with the High Street Circus. I knew a couple things. I knew, one, that the career couldn't last forever. And then I also knew that I just thought it was an interesting story. The idea of people doing, not just us, there were lots of people that did it, of being street performers and that lifestyle. And so I began to think about, back then, about writing some kind of story about the career. And then years later, I saw a performance in San Francisco of a guy who basically told the story of his life, and he did it, and he was also a video producer, and he rolled in these video segments highlighting his storytelling. And he also played a little music, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Because he was storytelling, so it was a very intimate performance. He talked about, his career, and he talked about growing up, and he talked about issues with his family, so it was very poignant and touching. And he also talked about some of the video productions that he'd done, and he used to travel across the country and just document these wild and crazy things that he would find. And his videos were just outstanding. And the whole thing resonated with me so much, I thought, wow, I wonder if I could do something like that someday.
Yeah.
It was just a thought. I had no idea how I ever possibly could. It was just so many aspects resonated with me so much. The live storytelling, the music, the photography, the family history, the filmmaking, the subjects of the filmmaking. And I just began to see a lot of parallels between what he had done and what I was doing. And so it was just a thought. And then years later, I moved back east, and I was able to enroll in graduate school. And so I went to school and got a graduate degree in video production.
Very good. So that kind of led you to the next level.
Well, what that did is that led me to the tools. And,
Gotcha.
and it also led me to the program, which gave me the opportunity. And all of a sudden, I had to come up with some kind of final project, and most video students do a documentary. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to do a documentary, but I'm not going to do a standard documentary. I'm going to do a documentary like the guy that I saw years ago, where I will stage it as a live performance. I will tell my story, and then I'll roll in all these segments. And so that's how I got started. And the first thing I had to do, Mike, is I had to go through all my boxes of old videos and old photographs and newspaper articles and find out what the heck I had.
Yeah.
And, and this was all stuff that was like 15, 20 years old. It was on old format stuff. It wasn't labeled. I spent ages just kind of going through it. But I went through it, and whenever I'd find an interesting clip, I would highlight it and then find some way to use it. And that's kind of how the thing got started. And I've been developing it ever since. That was over 10 years ago that I finished it as a project for school. And I've actually been able to continue working on it and continue developing it. And it's improved greatly over the years.
And in terms of a live show, what can the audience expect? What's the whole feel?
Well, it's basically me sitting on a stool. I got a laptop on my right, I got a guitar on my lap, and I have a big video screen on my left. and I address the audience very personably, very directly, and I just